let's talk about some books. We will talk more about scary, creepy, eerie horror books in a bit when we get to the upcoming books that I'm going to read portion of stream. But as always, I'm going to start with the books that I read last month, which I don't think any of the books that I read last month were like scary. Like, I don't think any of them were horror. So we'll come back to our horror discussion in a bit. But first, let's talk about what I read. So for the books that I read last month, I will go through them in the order that I read them, or specifically the order that I finished them in. Sometimes I'll read books like overlapping. I read in total, I wrote my stats out. I don't need to count. I read 9 books in total. One of them was an audiobook. So I listened to 7 hours and a half-ish of audiobook, and I read over 2,000 pages in total across the month, which is pretty exciting. So we're gonna go through them, like I said, one at a time in the order that I finished the books. Okay, cool. Nice month. Thank you. Yeah, it was a very good month. I've been reading a pretty large quantity, which also, another caveat, as always, we read at different paces. We have different amounts of free time. If you read 1 book last month, that's still an incredible amount. That's still really, really great. If you read 0 books because you had other stuff going on, that's okay too. This is not like we don't have to compare. But I have been just super jazzed about books lately. And so I've been reading a bunch each month, and I keep waiting for the month where I kind of my energy for reading slows down, and it hasn't happened yet. So just gonna keep riding this wave. All right, so anyways, we're gonna go through these one at a time. So the first book that I finished last month was called Thank You for Sharing by Rachel Runya Katz. This was an ARC, so I got access to it before it was published. And where is it? Yes, and it was published last month on September 12th, so it's already out. So if this seems like your kind of thing, then cool. You can read it now. This one was a romance book, which I've talked about this a lot. I keep describing myself as someone, or I used to describe myself often as someone who does not like romance. But I've been finding more and more romance books that I like. I'm also getting a much better sense for the difference between really disliking a romance book, which sometimes happens, enjoying a romance book, and then loving a romance book. And this one was very solidly in the enjoying a romance book category for me. So I gave it 3.5 stars on Storygraph. It's like friends to enemies to coworkers to lovers. Which was sort of interesting. It very much had the romance book type thing where it's wow, I can't believe as adults that I'm reconnecting with my childhood friend who I had a horrible falling out with. It's sort of huh. But I really the characters in this were really, really, really cute. And I really liked I felt like this book did a good job of fully developing the characters. I very much understood each of the characters' personalities, their motivations, their feelings in life. They had a significant amount of personal history, which really helps me get into a book and feel like the characters are real, I guess. But it was just it was good. It was really good. It wasn't I wouldn't reread this, and it wasn't my favorite book of all time, but I very solidly enjoyed it. And I think others would too. Yeah, I liked it. The main characters, I think they're both one of them, they end up having to work together. One of them, their names are Daniel and Leah. And they're both Jewish. So there's a good amount of Jewish experience and culture. So if that is interesting to you, then here you go. But Leah works at I think the Natural History Museum in Chicago. I don't know. And so there's like a good, and they end up having to like work together on something. And I liked the dynamic there. I think the reason that I didn't like love this book, the reason that I enjoyed it, but it wasn't like one of the best books I've ever read, was that there was a lot of like sort of cliche, or like not cliche, but like I feel like there was some like jumps in their interactions that wasn't super believable, and very much gave me that, like, sometimes when I'm reading a romance book, if it has a lot of like cliches or like things that would only happen in a romance book, I am taken out of the story and I'm very much like, yeah, a romance book. And it definitely had some of those, which I think was just not my most favorite thing of all time. But overall, the characters were so nice. This was also another book. I feel like I've been reading a lot of books lately where the side characters are like phenomenal. And this was one of the books where there were side characters in this book that were so good. And like, I really, really enjoyed how they impacted the story. So like overall, I really liked it. There were moments that I sort of was taken out of the story, which made me not like love it, but it was really good. Also, again, this one I got early access to, but it was published on September 12th. So if you'd like to read it, if it sounds up your alley, you can go read it. You can read it right now. Do you think I'll like it? I think that you would like it, but not necessarily love it. Like, I think you might feel similarly to how I felt is a guess, where like, I think like it did not sometimes when I read romance books, they annoy me, and this did not annoy me, but there were a few moments where I was just like, really? But like gently, like quietly. Does that make sense? It wasn't overly spicy. There were some like it did the thing that most romance books do, where there's like a lot of pining, which I love a good pining moment. But there weren't a lot of like very, very spicy scenes, which I also appreciated. So I think you would like it. It wouldn't piss you off. Is my guess. Forgivably cringe. Yes, exactly. Like it, which I think also, like, if you get through an entire romance book without one single cringe moment, like, is it a romance book? Which like isn't a dig. I feel like that sounds like a dig, but I think for me at least, the romance genre like has to have some amount of cringe, which is kind of fun and cute and a thing that I enjoy about it. But too much, it's like a fine line. Also, Sage, thank you for the hydrate. Okay, my next book, we're starting off not super strong. The next book that I read, I didn't like, and I almost didn't finish it. And I'm very curious to see if anyone else has read this book. I really, really would like to know what your thoughts were. I don't want to spoiler it too much. So, and my, like, a main reason that I didn't like it has to do with the core plot, and it's like a little bit of I don't want to explain it too much because it would spoil some of the core plot, but my impression of this book was that like misogyny is kind of like a core piece here, and I just wasn't here for it. I think after reading this book, I read some reviews and also some like thought, like sometimes after I finish a book, I'll just read either reviews or like comparisons, almost like what is this story similar to kind of deal. And I read somewhere that people compared this story to The Stepford Wives, which is I think that's a book that was turned into a movie, I'm pretty sure, but I've only seen the movie. I've never read the book. And I love the movie. I think it's really, really good and interesting. But I think that sometimes it feels to me like I don't know. I don't need to hear that story again. And this was not that, like, this was not the exact same as The Stepford Wives by any means, but it felt like it had similar like themes, and I just felt like I didn't need it. I picked this book because I was specifically looking to read some like dark academia last month, and I heard that this one was a really good example of that. And I really liked, like, the thing that I really enjoyed about it was the setting. I felt like the setting was so interesting and very eerie and really well described, and I really liked it. And I also really liked like the descriptions of a lot of the characters. Like I found the characters to be really interesting. But overall, the general plot just like didn't work for me. Also, there was weirdly like a very large amount, I thought personally, which like, I'm no professional. This is just my opinion as someone who reads a lot. I felt like there was too much dialogue. Like, which is not usually how, like I actually typically really enjoy dialogue. Like I don't know. I think it's like I think I can get really caught up in dialogue usually. Like dialogue is often the part of a book that I will read through really quickly because I'm like, oh, I'm there, you know? And in this book, there were so many, it felt like there were interactions that were just repeated. And I'm not sure if I felt that way because I had already sort of made the decision that the book wasn't really working for me. So then I was reading it with like a negative view, or if that was really the case. It was hard for me to tell. I don't know. Overall, this one did not do it for me. I rated it 2 stars because I still finished it and I wasn't like super mad. I just didn't enjoy it. So do with that what you will. If you read it and liked it, I like super, like I feel like for like this book took up so much of my brain because I felt like I wanted to hear from someone who liked it. I wanted someone to be like, okay, but here's why it was good. Here's what you were missing. But I don't know. I don't know. This one wasn't for me. I borrowed this one from my local library though, which was fun. That part was cool. I have a sniffle. Excuse me. Also, I'm gonna put some chapstick on. Anyways, if you know of any dark academia books that you liked and that preferably like weren't super misogynistic with the story or plot, I would love to hear because I really want to read dark academia now, and I feel like I don't know where to start because I started at the wrong spot. Oh, all right. Anyways, the third book that I read, I really liked this one, so now we're switching it over to like great. This is Crying in H Mart by Michelle Zauner. This is a memoir about Michelle's. This one is really, really good, but it is tough. I would recommend that you check the trigger warnings or content warnings before starting this if you're interested in reading it, which like this isn't a spoiler because this is like how the book starts. Let me just confirm that that's true. I don't want to spoiler things. Sorry. Yes. Okay. Yeah. The very first sentence of the book, the very, very first sentence is, ever since my mom died, I cry in H Mart. And I think like that's what the book's about. The book is about Michelle's mother's death and illness and her experience of her mother having cancer and eventually passing. So I guess there's the content warnings. If that's not your vibe, or if you don't feel like you're in an emotional space to read that, I wouldn't. It's very, very raw and vulnerable and honest about really, 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 really difficult experiences, which I really enjoyed is such a weird word because it was a really hard read, but it was written beautifully, and it was like something like, I think having to deal with, I don't want to get too much into it because I don't want to make this like a triggering conversation for anyone, but I think that particular experience is so tough and is so awful, and oftentimes the way that we talk about it is like, you're so strong and your family's so strong and everyone is pushing through, and that like I know why we talk about it that way. It's really hard to like admit, especially in the moment, how awful and difficult an experience is. but it felt really like justifying and like necessary to get to exist in a book that was like, no, yeah, this is awful. This is a terrible experience. And it's really hard for all of us. Does that make sense? Like it was really, it just was like it was an honesty about an experience that I really needed, you know? I loved her unwillingness to sugarcoat the experience. Yes, that's exactly what it was. And she kind of talks about that in the book, how like this is, yeah, like that she's being really honest about the worst parts of this. I love this book. I had a bunch of like little tab marks for some of my favorite spots. I cried so much reading this book. It was also very like, it was really interesting because like the book centers around Michelle's mother's like sickness, her experience with her having cancer and eventually passing, but we also get to understand her experience growing up with her mother, like what her mother was like as a parent, Michelle's experience of like growing up as an individual person, how this experience impacted her life. Like it was really good. I gave it 5 stars, which I feel like typically when I read a memoir, I don't know how many memoirs I've given less than 5 stars, because I feel like when I read someone's personal experience, I'm like, yeah, 5 stars. This is the best thing I've ever read. I can't believe that it's so good. But yeah, it's really good. She talks, it's also a lot about her like Korean identity. Like it's really good. There's a lot. Yeah, it's good. It's not the biggest book in the world too. So I found that I read through this like pretty quickly. Yeah, I really liked it. Also, Michelle's Honor is a musician. Her like musician act name is Japanese Breakfast. So if you like, I was drawn to this book because I remember really liking Japanese Breakfast. So it was kind of interesting. It was very interesting to like see a different side of a person. Oh, it was just really good. 10 out of 10. Highly recommend this book. Again, I would really recommend that you sort of like think about the content of the book before you start reading it. So that like you, like it's one that I feel like you just need to be in the right emotional space to read, because it is really hard. Yeah. Does that make sense? I'm just looking through some of the spots that I tabbed. It's like, oh, it's really hard too, because, or in a good way, I think that like, it's a book that is like about the loss of a parent, but also about how difficult, like she just really doesn't sugarcoat anything. Yeah. Does that make sense? Anyways, 10 out of 10. Do recommend. Please read this. But also, if you read it and you cry a bunch, don't blame me. Okay, it's not my fault. Okay, next one. And then I read. I was like, quick, I need to read something lighthearted right now, or else I'm gonna lose it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so the book that I read after one of the saddest books that I've ever read was Beach Read by Emily Henry, which was not sad at all. So this is my 3rd Emily Henry book that I've read, I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty positive, you know? Anyways, I didn't love this one. This was, okay, I feel like typically my book, like I really liked all of the, like, I really liked all of the books that I read last month, and I'm glad that I read all of them. But I think typically my book ratings are like 4.5 stars, 4.5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars, 3 stars, 5 stars. Like that's what my monthly book review numbers are. It's like all really good books that I super loved, and then like one that I didn't. And this one was a very wide range. Like I think I had like a one of each star number in my reviews, which is interesting for me. So this one I think I ended up giving it like 3 stars possibly, because I liked it, I enjoyed it, but I didn't really love it. And I think the biggest thing is that like I weirdly like really did not connect with either of the characters. And I think in the previous 2 Emily Henry books that I've read, I have very much connected with the characters, either because I relate to them or I find them really compelling, or like whatever it is, like for some reason I really connect with the characters. And for this one I didn't. I just didn't find either of the characters very compelling. And I don't know, I think this was very much an example of like personal preference. And I think that you could, like, other people will definitely find the characters compelling and really, really enjoy this book. But for some reason, it never happened for me. Like, I never had that click of like, oh my gosh, I love them. And therefore I didn't get super, super into it. So, which like was a little bit sad for me because it is enemies to lovers. And you all might know, I love enemies to lovers. I think it is my favorite trope. But I felt like it wasn't enemies enough. I don't know. I wanted things to be more dramatic almost. Like, I didn't buy the enemies part of the enemies to lovers section of it. And then I just didn't find either of the characters super exciting to me. I didn't connect with them. So this was like, okay for me. But very much, like, I know I always talk about how, like, we all have different preferences, so other people will like things that I didn't like, I'll dislike things that you like, whatever. I could, like, it was fun and well written, and I really liked the plot, but I think it was this, like, fundamental, like, because I didn't connect with the characters, I couldn't connect with the book, and that is something that is so deeply a personal preference thing. So, like, if you like Emily Henry, still absolutely worth giving it a try. But like, if you start reading it and you're like, I'm not feeling these characters, you'll probably continue to feel that way. Or at least I did. Hi Sarah, welcome in. How are you doing? What are you up to? We're chatting books today. It's a Books with Bella day. And I'm Bella, and I have books. Anyways, if anyone else read this, I'm very curious to see what you thought, particularly if you read this and other Emily Henry books. I really want to know like what your thoughts are, because like I gave this one 3 stars. I think I gave People We Meet on Vacation, which was another Emily Henry that I read, maybe like 4.5 stars or something, or maybe 4 stars. And I gave Happy Place 4.5 stars because I really liked it. So like, I really like Emily Henry and I like her writing style. It was just that I didn't connect with this one. It's already October. Can you believe it? Hi, honey. Welcome in. Yeah, we were talking about this at the beginning of stream that like, it doesn't feel like October. It doesn't feel like it's actually October. Getting ready for the pumpkin patch. Nice. I didn't read books, but I love coming to Books with Bella. Heck yes. You don't have to read to be here. You just have to want to hear me talk about books. Oh my goodness. But yeah. I also like, okay, this one is set in like Michigan on the beach at a lake beach. And I felt like I would really like, there were so many things that made this book one that I should have enjoyed, but because I just like didn't, oh, my nose is so itchy right now. Because I didn't connect with the characters, it was just like a no. Yes, pink cowboy hat and a squishmallow. Yeah. You know, just vibes. Also, it's a horse squishmallow, which you kind of can't tell because the hat's covering the like horse mane part, but it is a horse. I like your overviews of the books. I lied to myself saying I'll read one of them. Super fair. You don't have to read them. You can just pretend. If anyone ever, here's what the stream is actually for. It's so that if you ever go out in public and someone's like, what's the last book that you read? You can say, oh, I read Beach Read by Emily Henry. I wanted to like it, but I didn't connect with any of the characters. Boom. Just take my opinions. They're yours now. Oh my goodness. Anyways, I know at least one of my friends has read this book and said that it was not their favorite of Emily Henry books. So I know I'm not alone in my opinions, but yeah. Been here thinking it was a donkey the whole time. Honestly, still iconic, but it's a horse. Date small talk prep, exactly. There you go. Now, next time you go on a date, y'all are gonna sound so well read. Oh my goodness. I don't encourage lying, but I mean, I won't tell you what to do. Oh my goodness. Also, okay, this was the first book that I read during our summer or fall readathon. So if you did not hear, last month, my wonderful friend Bookie, the Linden Bookie, who's been here hanging out, we hosted together a readathon, this was my first time hosting a readathon, and really my first time like actively, loudly participating in a readathon, because I have like quietly participated in readathons before, but not like shared about it. So we had this like really fun 2 weeks of encouraging one another and any participants to read. And we had a series of like prompts that was related to summer and fall. And we scheduled it to be like half in summer and half in fall. Like the event landed right where the fall equinox was right in the middle, which was so cute of us, I think. Anyways, this is the first book that I read of the summer or fall readathon. It was my first like summer book pick. So it was very like, I very much like, I picked it with that event in mind, and it was a really solid like summery book. So I know we're like ending summertime, but sometimes I feel like I get to a point in winter months where I'm like, I need to pretend it's summer. Like, give me a summer book. I just need to pretend. So if you're looking to add some books to your to read list that will allow you to just pretend that it's summer, this is definitely a good one. But yeah, we had such a fun time with the readathon. Also, I want to say a huge thank you to everyone who participated. We had a lot of fellow readers who shared their reading progress in Discord and on Instagram, and we also hosted 2 like read-ins in our Discord servers where we just hung out together and read, which was actually really nice and kept me like really focused. Like it was like, since then I've done that more than once, where I've just like hopped in Discord with friends and just read together. But anyways, I had a super fun time, and I think our goal is to host more of those, particularly like at those weird times of the year where you just feel like you need a little push to read some more. So if y'all liked that and you'd like to participate in a future one, let us know. We'll probably do it again. It was super fun. We don't encourage lying, but we do encourage pretending. Yeah. Also, like, sometimes I feel like, have you been reading any books lately? Gives me the same vibes as like, oh, you like that music artist? What's your favorite song? It's sort of like, okay, like, I don't have to prove to you. I don't know. Maybe I just have a really jaded view of people wanting to, maybe like throughout my life, people have like wanted to get to know me, and I'm like, I don't have to tell you anything about me. I don't have to tell you anything. Maybe this is a me problem. Anyways, readathon was so fun. Bookie, thank you so much for hosting together and for suggesting it. It was so good. I would super love to do it again. I had such a good time. The next book that I read last month was called Pluralities by Avi Silver. This is another one that I read. I had an arc for, which also I read all my arcs on my Kindle, and I recently redecorated my Kindle, and look at how cute. I used to just have like a yellow case on it, which I really liked. The yellow case was great, but I updated it to be a clear case. I got influenced. I feel like this is what everyone on the internet is doing with their Kindles. So I put a clear case with some like stickers in it, and then I put a little pop socket so that I can hold it easier in bed. Anyways, that's my Kindle. I read this one on the Kindle. So this was an arc. I got early access to it before it was published, and then it was published on October 3rd. So it was just recently published. So if this one sounds interesting to you, you can read it now. This was really good and very interesting. I want to open up my review of it to help me with my thoughts. It's categorized as speculative fiction. My nose. It's categorized as speculative fiction, which I feel like is like a genre that I'm still sort of like understanding what that means exactly. But basically it was sort of like two stories. One of the storylines was very similar to reality, like as we know it or as I know it. And the other story was like fantasy vibes. Like it was like in a galaxy and involved a spaceship. And at the end, I won't spoiler it, but like you understand how the stories are connected. But they're like, it's kind of like, it was really interesting. I really, really enjoyed these like two separate storylines that are in vastly different universes and throughout the book do not seem connected, but also like very much like support one another in themes, if that makes sense. Anyways, yeah, I really, really liked this. It was about gender identity. Yeah, this is a very gender book. It's about there's kind of like a main story and then a second storyline, and in the main storyline the character is sort of coming to terms with their understanding of their own gender identity, their relationship with it. Yeah, it's really good. It's really, really, really good. This one was one that I read through. It's pretty short. The book is only 142 pages, which is not nothing, but it isn't super long. It's one that I read through very quickly and really I really enjoyed it. Like, it was very satisfying to get to the end and sort of recognize the connection between the two storylines, which, like, also the secondary storyline that involves like a spaceship I don't want to say too much more, was so beautiful and so satisfying. Like, both stories were just so, like, they really landed in my heart and stayed there, you know? I can't explain that better. But it was so satisfying to get to the end and sort of like my brain all at once was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm this is what I'm meant to understand from this book. It was just really satisfying. I would definitely recommend this to queer friends, because it was like, it felt like a book for us, you know? Like, it felt like a book that I, as a queer person who thinks about my own gender identity and expression, like, I related to this book, but I also didn't feel like this book was trying to, like, explain something to me. Sometimes I find that books with queer storylines do a decent amount of work making them understandable to not queer people, which is which totally makes sense, and also is really, really important for queer people as well who are trying to understand themselves. That's not a critique, just to clarify. It's not a critique. But this book allowed itself to be confusing at times. Does that make sense? Does this sort of make sense? Like, I feel like sometimes I read queer books and they don't allow for a bunch of time being confused. Does that kind of make sense? Whereas, like, I think for some people, everyone's experience is different, but for some people, the experience of questioning your gender identity or your understanding even of gender can be difficult and confusing and can stay confusing. And that's okay. And I think this book was very much like, it allowed it to be okay for that to be confusing. Does that make sense at all? Without, like, it didn't, I don't know. I hope this makes any sense to you. Either way, I would absolutely recommend this one. Again, it's a pretty quick read, so it's sort of one that, like, it's not, you don't have to like allocate a zillion days to read it. I don't know your reading pace, but it is a shorter read. And I just thought it was really well written and beautiful and kind of, even if not directly relatable, still relatable. I really liked it. I was partly drawn to it because of the cover, because the cover is so cool looking. Like the two things that made me want to read it were that it was tagged as a queer book and the cover, and no regrets. It was really good. And like, I can't even explain to you that the secondary story was just so beautiful. Like, it was so beautiful, and it made me want to write like sci-fi fantasy, even though I don't really believe in my own capacity to write or have any ideas for writing, but it was inspiring, and it was so beautiful, and it made me want to like hug myself and all of my friends. Like this one really, it hit me and it stuck with me, and I really like it, and it made me really grateful for being gay. I don't know, just read it, okay? I really liked this one, and I think you should read it. Again, this was one that I got, like I mentioned, I got early access to this one, so I didn't purchase this book. I received an early copy so that I could provide a review, but I really liked it. I've been getting super lucky with my ARC books that I get access to, because they've all been like just really good. Do you like? Okay, next book. Okay, so the next book that I read, this was another one that I picked to read during the summer or fall readathon. Oh, I have been looking for, I knew it was in one of my books and I just like didn't search all of them. This is a me problem, but I've been looking for the bookmark, the summer or fall readathon bookmark, and it was in this book. I just like couldn't find it for the longest time, but this is the bookmark. Bookie made these. Look, this is the summer side, okay? Super cool, summery, look at all those berries, but then look, this is the fall side. Look at it. Look at the mushrooms and the leaves. Look at how cute. Anyways, I really loved these. Yeah. Okay. Anyways, this was another book that I picked for the summer or fall readathon. This was like a fall book pick. Winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature. Okay. It was really good. It was very, so this one, like, the reason that I picked it was that I felt like it would have fall vibes, because the vibe of the book is it's this like adult woman, and she's like looking back on her life and her like childhood, and sort of reframing her understanding of her experiences as a child in this like boarding school, and then there's sort of like a, not exactly a twist, but sort of a darkish twist, and I really like. So anyways, you're sort of like you're taken through the main character's whole entire life, from like childhood to her age as an adult, but like as her sort of looking back at things, which is really, like, I really enjoy that perspective of like someone telling a story, but they're looking back at their younger years. So I liked that, but I picked it because I felt like the like boarding school vibes would be good fall, and it felt like a good fall book. I also think that this would be decent for now, because it's not a horror book, it's not a scary book, but it's definitely like a bit dark, I would say. It's tagged as like a dystopian book, which I think is kind of fair, but it's not. I feel like sometimes when I think about dystopian books, it's like it's the end of the world, everything's terrible and totally different, and this one is very much like there's a main thing that is different and is the sort of like dark thing at the center of this book, but it feels really relatable and like similar to real life, I guess. I don't know. I really liked this one. I loved the way that it was told. Again, that like perspective of sort of like looking back and reassessing all of the sort of like experiences in one's life from younger times, and the kind of like dark twist thing. I like the way that it is revealed, which is not like, and then all at once I understand what's going on. You sort of like get hints of it over time, it's just very, like, I was really, really sucked in. Like, this was the kind of book where I really didn't want to put it down, and I just felt very, like, inside of the story, which, like, this is a book that has gotten, like, really, really, really good reviews. It's not like a recent book. It was published in 2005, and so it's like, it's pretty well known, but I really, really liked it. It was just creepy, but in a really good way. It really had my attention, and yeah. So anyways, if you're looking for something like dark, but that's not going to be like super scary or like intense, I think this is a really good pick. Also, welcome in, new friend. Thank you so much for the follow. Hello. We're talking about books today. But yeah, if anyone else read this, I'm definitely curious to hear other people's thoughts. It feels like the kind of book where, like, it might be a miss for some people because it is kind of slow at times in like a good way. Like, I think, like, what's very interesting about this, like, adult looking back experience is that the amount of knowledge of the situation that you, the reader, has sort of matches with the child storyline. So when the main character, who's named Kathy, when Kathy is, like, going back and talking about her early days, like, in this boarding school when she's, like, a young kid, you know as much about the world and the situation as young Kathy does. So even though adult Kathy is, like, going back and obviously has all this perspective and knowledge, you do not have that. You are in line with young Kathy's understanding. And so slowly, as Kathy, like, gets older, you start to learn more and more and more about the world. And I really like that sort of style, or that, like, pacing, but I can very much understand other people being, like, kind of impatient with that. So I don't know, that's a thing to know going into it, I guess. And I think it's also worth, like, pretty much as always, it's definitely worth checking the content warnings on this one. Although yeah, I would, you know, if there's stuff that in a book that might make you uncomfy, I would check the content warnings. But yeah, I really liked this one, would recommend. It was really, just, like, really captivating. Like, I felt like I couldn't put it down. Ooh. My nose. And I forgot if I said that, but I gave that one 4.5 stars. That was my review. Okay, the next book that I read this was another one that I read for the summer or fall readathon. I thought that this would be a really good fall pick, and it was good. It was really good. But yeah, this one was really interesting. So this is Before the Coffee Gets Cold. I had heard of this one a lot. It had been recommended to me a lot. It's tagged with like magical realism, and the sort of, like, main thing in the book is that there's a, like, coffee shop that lets you go back in time, and it's really, really interesting. It's also, like, this book it's interesting because this, like, physically this book is like it's okay, that's not a good comparison. It feels like shorter, like smaller than a lot of other hardcover books. Like, it's 200-ish pages, but it was a very quick read. I read this in one day. We did, I think, like, a couple of weeks ago, we did a reading stream where I just, like, read on stream. This is what I read. I'm pretty sure this is what I read, and I finished it later that night. So it was a pretty quick read, and the story is, like, the book is, like, split up into 4 sections, so it's sort of like 4 chapters, but they're it's only 4 for the whole entire book. And I wasn't sure if it was going to be, like, one continuous story or, like, separate stories almost, because, like, if you look at the names of the sections, it's like the lovers, husband and wife, the sisters, mother and child. And so I was sort of like, oh, are these, like, I think these are going to be distinct stories. And it's cool because it's sort of a mix of both. Like, each section is a distinct story that has, like, a kind of, like, a resolution. It's like about Like it is its own kind of like contained section, but there's still an overall plot, which I really, really, really enjoyed. Like I thought it was just very cool to have these pretty distinct sections, but still that work as part of a larger book, if that makes sense. I really loved it. I loved the way that it was written. It was very like, it was a pretty like emotional book, I would say. Not in a negative way, just in a like, the characters that you're learning about, like they have a reason for wanting to go back in time, if that makes sense. So it's definitely, it is a little like, some of the topics are a little bit dark, but overall very like hopeful kind of deal. I really, really liked this one. I just thought it was like so creative. Like also the way that the time travel sort of deal works is so interesting and creative and very like, oh, it was just really cool. I really, really liked this one. I would absolutely recommend it. It was so neat. It was so neat. I think this was another one that like I have heard a lot about. I think it was pretty well known and pretty well received. So I kind of knew going into it that I would probably enjoy it. And I did. So great. I gave this one 5 stars because it was really good. It just really like, it really stood out to me. Also, it's a series, so there are more books in the series, which I anticipate will be of like similar deal. So I'd really like to read more of them. I think there might be like 3 or 4 in total. Let me look. Yeah, it looks like there's 4 in total. So the second one is called Tales from the Cafe. The third one is called Before Your Memory Fades, and the fourth one is called Before We Say Goodbye. And they're all like of similar size. Anyway, so I'm definitely planning to read more of them in the future. So yeah, I like this one. Oh my gosh. I have an itch on my face, but I don't want to like scratch my face. So yeah, that was the next one that I read. That was the third one of the books that I read during the summer or fall readathon. And then the last one, which I anticipate this will be the one that people have thoughts on. The last one that I read in the summer or fall readathon was Mockingjay by Suzanne Collins, which this is the third and final book in the Hunger Games trilogy. This was not my first time reading it. I've read the Hunger Games a lot of times. These were one of my favorites when I was younger. I read them like around the time that they came out, I think, if I recall. And I've read them several times in adulthood since then. They're one that I just like. Sometimes like I like to have books, particularly like this type of book where it was a book that I read when I was younger and it was a series. I like to have books like that I can kind of come back to whenever I'm wanting like the comfort of being able to read something that I am already very familiar with. I don't know if y'all are like that. Like a lot of times I love reading a book that I've never read before and I want to learn something new, but sometimes I just need that comfort of a reread. And The Hunger Games is definitely a series that I come back to and reread often. So yeah, this was me finishing my reread of The Hunger Games. I read Mockingjay. I mean, I have given this, like, all of the books in the series are 5 stars to me because, like, I love them. They're so good. But I really, I feel like we've been talking about this entire Hunger Games reread was captured in our Books with Bella streams. So I think every single book, when I finished it, I ended up like talking about it a little bit on stream. And we, for whatever reason, I don't know like where this came from, but we talked a lot about like Gale as a character at times while I was rereading this. So I feel like I added a couple of like stickies of things that I like wanted to think about. And I was going through and I realized that like literally every single sticky, not an exaggeration, every single sticky was Gale related, because I have like big thoughts TM on Gale in this series, and I think Yeah, anyways. So I like incidentally read this book, like mostly just thinking about Gale. Which was sort of interesting, but I just was like, it was, so we talked a lot, like after reading The Hunger Games and the second book, which is Catching Fire, I recall talking a lot with friends on stream and then also just like in general about Gale as a character and like if he's a good character or a bad character and like whether or not we root for him, what we like and dislike about him. And I remember a lot of people really hating Gale from the start. And I'm not a Gale hater. Sorry. I'm a Gale sympathizer. I don't know. Maybe that's a strong word. I don't know. It's hard to capture my thoughts briefly. But like before I had reread Mockingjay, I remember, cause like, I think a lot of also like light spoilers. This is the one that I am going to do light spoilers for. This is the third in a series. And it was wildly popular. There are movies. So I'm going to assume that a lot of y'all know at least a little bit about the Hunger Games. So hopefully that's okay. But I'm doing some light spoilers. I think a lot of people's opinion of Gale is largely based on Mockingjay for like pretty super okay reasons, like very reasonable reasons. But I think knowing what you know about Gale from Mockingjay changes the way that you see him in The Hunger Games and Catching Fire, which also fair. And I kept being, because I was rereading The Hunger Games and then rereading Catching Fire, I kept being like, am I going too easy on Gale because because I'm in the middle of these books and I'm not in the middle of Mockingjay? But no, my opinion stands. I really feel a lot of sympathy for Gale. And I think his character, like, I think the thing that I always talk about whenever we talk about the Hunger Games is that basically all of the characters, particularly the children, and by that I mean any character that starts the series under the age of 18. So I'm including Gale in that. I know that he grows up during the books. I mean, so do all the characters, but like whatever. Anyways, all of the characters are all of the like young characters are fully just used. They are manipulated by adults, like, which doesn't make them not responsible for their actions, but is relevant when you look at their actions, in my opinion. And I think Gale is one that, because he's older than Katniss, and like, boy howdy, does he mess it up. It's hard to, like, long story short, I think it is really interesting to look at Gale's actions with the knowledge that like he is just like Katniss in that he's used and manipulated. Anyways, I digress. It was just fun. It was interesting for me today to like look at all of my stickies and be like, what were the things that were popping out to me in this book? Oh, here's another one about Gale. Yep. And there's another one about, oh, yep, that's Gale. Like, the understanding Gale was just like all I was thinking about. Anyways, if y'all ever want to talk about the Hunger Games, let me know, because the Hunger Games is my Roman Empire. I love this series so much. I talk about it, or I think about it pretty often, and I have a lot of like really big thoughts on it in general. Also, I think that it is such, like, every single time that I reread it, I love it more. I find it to be like a really, really powerful and compelling book, which I think is particularly impressive when you consider that it is meant for a young audience. I think that I just love it. I just really love it. I love the Hunger Games. If you ever want to talk about it, let me know. I'm so curious to hear what y'all think about Gale. Let me know if you're a Gale hater or if you are a Gale sympathizer. I mean, everyone's bad. That's the thing, okay? The thing that Mockingjay really reminds me is that like everyone is bad. In these books, everyone is terrible. And that is the point. There's no good characters. Anyways, everyone is a great character. The end. Anyways, if you read if you read any Hunger Games and you want to talk, let me know. But it was really fun. I'm very happy to have closed the door on another Hunger Games reread. I'll probably literally do it again next year. I fully finished this book. I had like a couple of chapters left and I stayed up a little bit late reading it and then like cried for like an hour straight, which I am not a crier. Like, I'll cry. Okay, stuff will make me cry, but I'm usually not a like. I'm usually like, I get a few tears in my eyes and then I'm like, okay, I'm good. No, I was like loudly sobbing for like an hour, and I was like, should I worry about me? Is this unusual? But I just have a lot of feelings about this book. It's just really hard. Okay, it's really horrible. Anyways, I loved it. Again, on a reread, my still same thoughts as always, which is that like it's a really, really, really wonderful, beautiful story. It's really, really tough, and yeah. Oh, okay, and then the last book. This is my last one of the ones to discuss from what I read in September. So the last book that I read in September was Arrival Most Vile, which was our book club pick. I finished this one like right at the end of the month. And I loved this book so much. This was a recommendation from Sage, which I know I already said this when we had our book club discussion, but Sage, thank you, because this recommendation was so good. I don't know that I would have picked it up on my own just because I hadn't really heard of it, but like, it's so good. I cannot recommend this enough. So we talked about this yesterday in book club, which also, if you would like to join book club and read some books with us, we read one book per month, and we read it all on our own time, and then we schedule, when the end of the month comes around, we schedule a time to discuss. Wow, I have like a stack of books in my way. Hang on. We read it all on our own time, and then when we get close to the end of the month, we like check in and schedule a time to sort of meet up and discuss it. So we discussed this one yesterday. We had to push it out of, usually we discuss in the same month, but my life's all over the place. So oh my goodness. But I think a lot of us talked about this, like, it reminded us a lot of Legends and Lattes in vibe. Very much, it's not like it's the same story in any capacity. Like, sometimes I don't love comparing things because I don't want, like, this was not like a copy of it. It wasn't like it was not the same as Legends and Lattes. But the thing about Legends and Lattes was that I think in the beginning of the book or something, it was described as like high fantasy, low stakes or something. And I think this was also similar to that, in that like the setting was like, it was a fantasy setting. It felt like I was in the world of Dungeons and Dragons. It was like potion shops, there's adventurers, there's magic, like incredible. But like the focus was not on the adventures. The focus was on these two rival potion shop owners, which I really liked. Like, it was so good. I loved this book as well. It was the perfect timing for me. Yeah, it feels like the kind of book that it was a really good fall read. I could see it being really good for like this month as well. But it was so good. I still like this was another one that I read through really, really quickly because once I got invested in the characters, which I did, I couldn't put it down. Like, I talked earlier about when I read Beach Read, I did not feel invested in the characters, or I didn't feel like connected to them. So I kind of like, I just didn't have like a great experience with the book because I was just not connected. This was like kind of the opposite, in that I was so like, I felt so strongly about both of the main characters. Like, they were so sweet and compelling, and I was instantly attached to them, which made me really love the book, you know? Excuse me. I was so invested in these characters. Me too. Like, both characters were just so great and so well written. Their background with I can't get over it. I love this book so much. Yeah, the main characters were great. Also, which this I feel like has been a trend in books that I've read lately, the side characters were so great as well. I loved, like, one of the main characters has this like big family and like has a younger sister that is just like so adorable. There's an automaton that's so sweet. And like there are some other like shopkeepers in this. It was just really, really, really sweet. I loved all of the side characters. It was also, the book was very like it was very descriptive. Like I just felt it sucked me in, and then I like couldn't put it down, which I really, really, really enjoyed. Like I read it very quickly. I was all in. I was totally invested. Also, it's a like I wouldn't categorize this as like a romance book, although maybe I would. It's like, I mean, it's fantasy, but it is also romance. And the romance was like, I really loved the way that the romance was told. Also, it's like an enemies to lovers, which, you know, I love an enemies to lovers, so had me there. But the romance, there was like for my friends who have different levels of tolerance for spiciness, there was one scene that was like vaguely spicy and not descriptive, in a good way. Like it was so nice because it didn't, I didn't feel like I had to like, sometimes I don't enjoy books where I'm just like reading about sex like over and over again, and I'm like, okay, I get it, we have done the deed, I understand. Okay. Which this did not do that. There was not even a single description, I think. Like it was so gentle. There was a lot of lust, which, you know, I love. And there was like kissing, and I love kissing, but it was like, oh, it was so gentle, which I really, really appreciated. It just was like comfortable to read. But it was still a very intense and like really, like I could still feel the romance. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Anyways, I loved this one. Really, truly, like one of my favorites that I read this year, possibly. That's how good it was. It was really good. And I loved the fantasy world as well. Like it was just really like nice and satisfying and really good. I loved it. Anyways, okay. Those are the books that I read last month, the month of September. Those are my September reads. I had some really, really, really good ones. I think my favorite might have been Arrival Most Vile, but H Mart, Crying in H Mart was also very high up there, but I feel like they're two different, like Crying in H Mart is nonfiction, Arrival Most Vile is fiction. So yeah. We did it. Okay, so we did it. So we are now officially 2 hours in, done with the first half of stream, which is the talking about the books that I read last month. If you read any books last month that you want to share, if you have any thoughts on any of the books that I talked about, you're totally welcome to share. Also, if you missed any or you like want to go back and get some more info, if you click that link, that will take you to my website. No big deal or anything. I'm pretty proud of it. Where I have a post up that just goes through all of the books that I am talking about today. So it has, there's a section for all of the books that I read last month. It includes links to Storygraph. So if you'd like to see more information like a synopsis, other readers' reviews, content warnings, which I love Storygraph for the like trigger warning section. It's really helpful. You can find those links, and I also have how I rated them, and like if I usually include notes of like this one was our book club pick, or like this one and I had an arc for, whatever. Anyways, that's all on my website. And then yeah, because sometimes we go through a lot of books somewhat quickly, or like I know y'all can't be here the whole time sometimes, so there's a little recap for you. You're welcome to check it out. Hi, welcome in. Sonicla, welcome in. I hope you're having a really good day. We're talking about books today. We just officially wrapped up the first half of books that I wanted to talk about, which was all of the books that I read last month. Now we're going to talk about my to read list, which let me just move my books around really quick. I'll move that pile over there so it's out of my way. And then I'll move over my pile for this month. Like, what is this hair doing? Like, what is this? Anyways, we're going to talk about all of the books that that are on my to read list for this upcoming month, which again, to clarify, does not mean that I'm going to read every single one. Usually I like create a list of books that I'm hoping to read next month, and I pull from that when I'm like ready to start a new book. But sometimes I'll find a book, I'll just like see a book and I'm like, you know what, that's it, I have to read this book right now. And so that'll sort of jump the queue. Or sometimes I'll start a book and then I'll be like, no, I'm not gonna read this book right now. So so I'll take you through the books that I have on my to read list. For this portion of stream, I generally, like, I won't give you my thoughts because I haven't read the books yet. And I typically don't tell you a whole lot about the books just because, again, sometimes I don't know a whole lot about them. Sometimes, like, I will just know a little bit, and that's what I'm going into it with. So I'll tell you a little bit, but not too much. And if you're curious about any of the books and you'd like to learn more, again, you can click that link that takes you to my website with my little post. And that one also has links to the Storygraph page for all of the books that I'm going to talk about. So if you'd like to read more, you can check out Storygraph. I need to take a deep breath. I was talking too fast. But yeah. So I will request that we don't do any spoilers for these books, just again, because I haven't read them yet. So no spoilers, please. But if you have read them and you liked them, or maybe they weren't your favorite, you're totally welcome to let us know. Also, if you have any books on your to read list, tell me about them. What are you reading? Hair trying to be the star of stream, literally. Like, normally it doesn't do that. It's fine. My hair is doing a very... like, I don't know what this, I don't know. I'm kind of into it today. What's your type of books? Good. I don't read just one genre. I think, like, I was thinking about this recently, and because I was looking at, like, I use Storygraph, and in Storygraph you can look at like a breakdown of all of the books that you've read this past year, or like other time sections. And I was looking at like what the genre tags were for my books that I've been reading, and weirdly this year I've been reading a lot of romance, which is not typical for me, but I've also been super into it. Like, romance has just been like working for me lately. It's been really fun, although I'm still picky about romance, but I'm still having a good time. But I read, like, I feel like I definitely gravitate towards a lot of like queer books, whether that be queer romance books or books that just like showcase queer characters. Like, I've read some fantasy books where like romance isn't like the main thing, but there are main characters that are queer, and that like often resonates with me. I'm talking too fast. I have to breathe. I just get too excited. I've also been really enjoying fantasy a lot. I often enjoy science fiction and like dystopian books. I feel like I'm less into horror, mostly just because I'm a huge baby. So I've been trying to like ease into more horror books, but like gently. So long story short, I don't have a type with books, but I do have preferences. Like, there are things that I like and dislike. Like, I'm pretty particular about romance. Again, I gravitate towards queer characters. I don't really, like, there was a time where I was reading a lot of those, like, mystery type books. And I feel like I'm not into that anymore because they started to get very predictable and formulaic, in my opinion. But yeah, do y'all have a book? Are any of y'all, like, do you have like a genre of book that you read that you kind of like mostly stick to? Because I feel like I'm definitely, like, I don't stick to a genre, and I wouldn't exactly call myself a mood reader, but I definitely am sort of a mood reader. I'm all over the place. How about you? I also like nonfiction. Like, I read a lot of memoirs lately, but I also have read a bunch of books about space. Like, I'll read anything, I guess. Also, my coffee is totally cold. Classic me. All right, so let's talk now about the books that I'm planning to read for this upcoming month. Like I said, no spoilers. I won't talk about them too much. We'll go through this part a little bit quicker. Although we do have an ad coming up, so I'll tell you about like one or two books and then we'll have an ad break. Classic. Classic. Okay, so the first one that I have is our book club book. And I actually genuinely don't know a whole lot about this one. This one was recommended someone else. So the way that book club works is that we pick books together. So anyone in the Discord is welcome to suggest books for us to read with book club. And then we usually pick several months in advance, sort of. It's not a perfect system, but we sort of pick in advance. But so then we'll vote on them all together. So folks, so again, anyone can suggest, and then we'll do this big vote where we just decide which books folks are interested in reading. So this one was suggested by someone else, and so I don't know a whole lot. I don't know a ton about it. But it is a fantasy, it's like categorized as a fantasy book. I think it has like a theme of like death, but I'm not totally sure exactly where that goes. But I'm really, really, really excited about this one. I've heard really, really good things. I think this might be the second book. It's not a series, but I think it is the second book written. No, not the second. Wow. Just kidding. This author has written many books, but this is the second book that I've heard of by TJ Klune, I'm pretty sure. The other one is The House in the Cerulean Sea, which I remember getting a huge amount of positive praise, and I haven't read it yet, but I've heard really, really good things. So yeah, we'll see. I don't know what to expect, but I'm really excited about it. My goal, I'm reading a book right now, and then my goal is to start this one next. So yeah. Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune. I think this one might have been suggested by Chloe, but I'm not 100% sure. I think Chloe has told me about, no, yeah, Chloe did suggest this. It was suggested by Chloe. So thank you, Chloe. I don't know if it's useful if I suggest books. I like different books type. See, so that's the reason that we do a vote, because I think like sometimes the reality, like I have suggested books in my own book club before, and then when I look at the poll, like no one else is interested in reading the book, and that is totally okay. I'll just read it on my own, you know. Like it is what it is. We like Ariel said, all reading is good reading. First of all, like we can all read whatever we want. Like we can all be happy with whatever books we want to read. But also, like you said, like sometimes we all like different books. So sometimes people will suggest books and like other people are not interested in reading them, and that's totally okay. It doesn't mean like it's like all it means is like that's going to be a book that you read on your own. But there have also been times where someone suggests a book and like it's one that I would like, for instance, Arrival Most Vile, which was our book club pick for September, was suggested by Sage, like I mentioned. I would not have picked it. Like I would not have, I hadn't heard anything about it. And like, I just didn't know anything about it. But then as soon as I saw it on the list, I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And everyone wanted to read it. Like it had really high votes. Like a lot of people were interested in it. And so it's so like the really cool, fun thing about getting book suggestions from everyone is that sometimes we'll hear about books that we might not have otherwise heard about and get excited about them. But the reality is sometimes we're not interested in the same books, and that's okay. So that's why we decide as a group. Anyways, that was such a long-winded answer. Everyone is always totally welcome to share book recommendations, but sometimes they won't be picked, and it's also really good to remember that if your book isn't picked for book club, it doesn't mean, like, all it means is that other people don't have the same book taste, and that's okay. Not a bad thing at all. But yeah, so yeah, anyways, this is our October book club pick. I think it'll be a good one for October. It's like not horror, but I think it has some sort of like eerie themes and vibes. Like I think it has a large theme that is related to death, which I don't totally know what to make of that, but I think it'll be a good one for October. I'm really excited. So if you have read this book or would like to read this book, you're totally welcome to join book club. So if you're interested in joining, it's all organized through the Discord server. So if you're already in the Discord server, great. If you're not, you can join with that link. You have to assign yourself the book club role in the roles channel. But yeah, we read a different book every single month. We discuss it at the end of the month. we select books together as a group, and it's really fun. And we're like close-ish to hitting a full year of having book club. Our first book club discussion was in February of this year, and we are currently picking our November, December, and January books. So we're like about to hit a year, which is so wild to me. I'm so excited. I appreciate any and all book recs. I tend to add things to my to-read list even if they aren't picked for book club. Yeah, that's the other thing, is the book suggestion spot is like open for everyone to see. So there have definitely been times where people suggest something and it doesn't get picked for book club, but it is a book that like I find really interesting, so I'll add it to my to-read list. So it's still totally cool to like suggest stuff. Everyone really appreciates it. Anyways, that is my book club spiel. Please join us. There's no pressure, but you could join us. Also, book club is totally like drop in, drop out. You can participate 1 month and then skip the next month. You can like lurk and never actively participate. Book club is not an obligation. Like you can come in and out as much as you want. So the next several books on my list are my scary book picks. So earlier we talked about horror books, scary time of the year, scary vibes. Here are the books that I've selected for my scary vibes. I'm so curious to hear what y'all think of them, and if you think they're scary. Or if you have any scary books that you're reading, please tell me. Okay, so my first up, I actually bought this book, I don't know, a while ago, because I loved the cover. Also related. This book has another cover, and I'm not sure. I think this might just be like the like reprint cover, or I'm not totally sure. I don't know. But this book has another cover, and the other cover is also so beautiful. I love the covers for this book. But anyways, I saw this in a bookstore, and I basically I looked at it for like 2 seconds and was like, yeah, I'm gonna get this book. And then later I came home and I went to add it to my Storygraph to read list, and I realized that it was already there because it had a different like cover in Storygraph, and I just didn't realize it was the same book. Anyways, I'm so excited about this one. It has basically, okay, if you're afraid of the ocean, I'm talking about one person in particular, I don't think that this is gonna be the one for you. Because it's like, also it's like this woman's wife goes down into the ocean and then is like gone for a long time, and then when she is found again, things are weird. And I read the back of the book, and like I read like the first, I don't know, 4 sentences and was like, I got like, even just thinking about it, I got chills. I'm so excited about this one. It sounds very scary and creepy, and I personally really like the ocean. But I also really like the ocean as like a like, I'm not afraid of the ocean. I'm not afraid of sea creatures, whatever, but I really like the ocean and sea stuff as sorry, my mic was a little toasty there, I think. I really like the ocean as a source of scary stuff. I'm dying. So like, even though I don't on its own find the ocean scary, I love stories about scary stuff from the ocean. Does that make sense? I just want to give myself a fear of the ocean, I guess. I don't know. But it looks really, really cool and creepy, and yeah, it just looks scary. I'm terrified of the ocean. Are you gonna read this one? Because I'm curious to see how much the ocean like is relevant almost. Like I'm wondering if reading this one would be made worse if you're afraid of the ocean. I don't know. Also, the main characters are yeah, I think the two main characters are two women that are married, so it's gay. So that's good. It's categorized as literary fiction, so it's not even like categorized as a horror book or anything, but it definitely seems scary, you know? So that's on my to read list. Really excited for this one. Also, just look at the cover. It's so good. I cannot wait. I'm gonna be done for. I really want to know what you think of this book when you read it. I'm so curious. I can't wait. Okay, my next one, which is another one in the scary vibes, which this one categorized as, okay, this one's categorized as a thriller, so like not horror but a thriller. It's called The Echo Wife. This is the book. I went into a bookstore not too long ago, and okay. I'm excited. One thing about me is that socializing is really tough, and particularly socializing with strangers, it's hit or miss for me. Sometimes when I go, like I was just recently talking about this, sometimes when I go shopping, I don't want to be spoken to. I don't want to be disturbed. I would like to exist in my own little bubble and not have to like communicate with strangers. But sometimes, particularly in bookstores that I have become comfortable in, or any store, but like a bookstore that I have gotten comfortable in, I really love a good book recommendation. Particularly from someone that like knows the books, you know? So I went into a bookstore not too long ago and I said, I'm kind of looking for some like scary books. And the person who worked at the bookseller was like, okay, like what kind of scary books? Like, are you like, you know, like horror? Do you like monsters? Like, what's the deal? And I was like, well, I just want something that's so off-putting that it sticks in my brain for the rest of time. Like, I want something weird. I like scary stuff that's weird and hurts my brain. Do you know anything like that? Which, like, this woman was incredible because instead of being like, are you well? She was like, yes, I know exactly the book. Which was incredible of her, like a true hero, an icon. And she took me to this book called The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. And she kind of I will not repeat the synopsis because you can go into this, like, well, I wouldn't be able to do it as well as she did, but she gave me this sort of little like, okay, intro, here's how the book starts. And it was so creepy that I got like chills, like I got goosebumps all down my arms, and I was like, I have to buy this book. But like, ooh, it sounds super, super, super creepy. And the echo part, the relevance here is cloning. I'm so excited about it. It looks really, really creepy. Like, it looks very much creepy. So if that's your kind of vibe, if you're looking for a scary book that's just gonna like probably be super creepy and just creep you out, read this with me. It looks like it has really good reviews. I think that Sarah Gailey wrote another book that was maybe, yeah, I think Sarah Gailey also wrote a book that was published last year called Just Like Home that I think I remember hearing a lot about as like a good book, which is another thriller. So I don't know. I haven't read anything else by Sarah Gailey before. But I'm just like unbelievably excited about this book because of that like one recommendation that I got that was chilling. So I hope you are interested. Oh my gosh. Okay. The next book that I read, this is another scary one, or not scary, but like, this is another one that I'm doing in why? This is another one that was inspired by like scary season. So this is called Natural Beauty by Ling Ling Wang. It's categorized as horror, so it definitely will be scary, I assume. And I don't know a whole lot else about it other than that it was recommended to me. And it's like the end of the, sometimes in Storygraph, which is what I use to like track my reading and stuff, they have book synopsises. Each book has a synopsis, and it usually like, sometimes it like starts out with like praise or like a little like one sentence explanation, and often at the end will say something about like the themes that it explores or like similar books, stuff like that. And it at the very end, it says Natural Beauty explores questions of consumerism, self-worth, race, and identity, and leaves readers with a shocking and unsettling truth. And a couple things about me. I love to hate on consumerism. I think that consumerism is really scary, and having like consumerism and like identity be central to a horror book sounds really interesting to me, and like it's gonna mess me up, one. And two, I love the word unsettling. I want books to unsettle me. Unsettling is so much scarier than a monster to me. So anyways, I'm really excited about this one. I don't know a whole huge ton about it, but I think that it is going to be scary and unsettling, and I'm really excited about it. Also, the cover is really pretty, so. I don't have a physical copy of this one. I borrowed the ebook from my library, so I'm gonna read it on my Kindle. And yeah, have you read this book, anybody? It doesn't have, like, on Storygraph, it doesn't have a ton of reviews, but it does have a pretty high average rating, which is interesting to me. Anyways, I'm excited about it, but I'm also kind of scared. I think it's gonna be one that's like not like scary, but will really mess me up in my head. So great, happy Halloween. And then my last like scary book pick is Silver Nitrate by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I've read another book by this author, and it was called what was it called? Oh, I'm looking. I forgot. It was called it was called Mexican Gothic, and I really liked it. Mexican Gothic was a horror book, and it was very like gothic, and like I loved the way that the story, like I loved how that story kind of, where that story went. So I imagine that I will also really like this story. Yeah. Yes. It's like, I think it's gonna be like gothic-y, but like film vibes. That's what I know. I don't know. I'm really excited. I actually have started this one, but I have only read like 2 chapters, so I haven't even gotten to any of the like scary stuff yet, but I love the characters. I really love the way that the characters are written. I like the setting. Yeah. Also, the main character is named Montserrat, which is an iconic name. Also, I got a signed copy, which I'm pretty excited about. So yeah, this one. I remember this one came out earlier this year, and it got a lot of people were talking about it, and I heard a lot of really good things about it. And based on how much I liked Mexican Gothic, I really think I'm gonna like this one. And I think it's gonna be like really creative. Also, I like the sort of like film, like I do not know a lot about film in general. I'm not like a film person. I haven't watched a lot of like old films and stuff, but I like that theme. I think it will be very interesting. So yeah. And that is all of my like scary books. So I have, like I mentioned, I have like 4 books that I think will be scary to me. So maybe that gives you a sense of like what kind of scary books I'm interested in. None of them are Stephen King. None of them are, I guess, like what? One of them was horror. I guess 2 of them were like categorized as horror, and a thriller. So yeah, those are my scary books. We'll see how it goes. Next up, I am hoping to read A Prayer for the Crown Shy. Hang on. Okay, sorry. I'm hoping to read A Prayer for the Crown Shy, which is the second book following A Psalm for the Wild Built, which was I think we read that for book club a couple of months ago. This is a short one. I loved A Psalm for the Wild Built. It's like what? Is that like, how would I don't know if it like, is it like dystopian? Not exact. It's like, they're science fiction books, but they're also like super creative and really, I don't know. A Psalm for the Wild Built was really, really, really good and just very like beautiful to read. And I liked it a lot. Anyways, this is the second one of the series. We talked about this when we read A Psalm for the Wild Built with book club, but I really felt like A Psalm for the Wild Built wrapped up very nicely. And I'm really curious to see what happens in the second book, because I felt like it was the kind of thing where I didn't need a second book, but I liked the way that the story was written so much, and the kind of world that the story existed in enough that I'm like excited for more, which I feel like oftentimes books that are parts of series, at the ending, I'm like, I need to know more. I can't wait for the next thing. Like, I'm so excited to know what happens next. So it was very interesting to read a story knowing that there was more and finish it feeling like I don't need more, but still be excited for more. Anyway, so I'm really excited to check this one out. I figured it would be nice to include like a short book, just one that I can get through relatively quickly in the mix, and also one that I wanted to have some like palate cleansers this month, so that if my scary books are really scary, I have some like gentle things. Also, I just noticed that on the back there's a like a little blurb review thing from Sarah Gailey, who is the author of The Echo Wife, which is another one that's on my list for this month. So that's kind of fun. But yeah, also it's beautiful. Like, look at that. But yeah, we'll see if I have been unsure about like when I wanted to read this one. But I feel like this month it might be a really nice one to mix in with some of my scary stuff. So we'll see. Okay. The next one that I borrowed this from the library, and this one is like so different from all of the other books. So here it is from my local library. It's called Unscripted, and basically my what I've heard is like this book is like Succession. That's what the show's called, right? My partner loved Succession, and I watched like a season of it, and it was too much for me. Just simply too much, too messy. But he loves it so much, and so I thought it would be funny and interesting if I read a book that's like about that, but in real life. So we'll see. I usually like to have like at least one nonfiction book on my to read list for each month. So this is my nonfiction. This is my nonfiction for the month. We'll see how it goes. Part of me is nervous that because Succession was like a bit much for me, the book will be as well. But also part of me is like, well, maybe I'll love this book and then I'll want to watch Succession, and then I can talk about it with Tony. So we'll see. I don't know. Did y'all watch Succession? Are you Succession fans? It was just so much for me. Like, it was it was a lot for me. Oh my goodness. Anyways, that one. My next one, my last two books that are on my to read list for the month are both arcs. So I have advanced copies of these books ahead of when they are published. But this one, I'm so excited about this one. This one comes out this upcoming week. It'll be published on October 10th. So if you're interested in it, you'll be able to get it quite soon. It's called Being Ace, and it is an anthology. So it has many authors, and it is basically, the book is meant to sort of offer, like, every single story in this book is like centers the asexual experience, and the idea is that like there's not a ton of ace stories out there, so here's a bunch of them, which I I haven't read an anthology. I was talking about this yesterday. I haven't read an anthology in a while, and I forgot how great they are. So not only am I really excited to read read stories that specifically center the asexual experience, I have also been like very excited about reading an anthology. Also, if you're not familiar, an anthology is like, also, like, I'm not a professional. Tell me if this is wrong. An anthology is like a collection of stories written by multiple authors that have a central, that has a central theme. So all of these are about asexuality, but each story there's like different types of stories, different authors, different writing styles. So all of the stories are like really, really different and unique, but they're all have the same sort of like focus. I've started reading this one already. I think I'm about halfway through. So I'll tell you more thoughts next month, but because it's about to be published, I will say I really, really, really like it so far. It is really, really cool. I think like I have talked with some friends and also like seen information on the internet about like asexuality. Although there are definitely plenty of stories that have asexual characters and that focus on asexuality, it's not like a ton. And I was really excited to get to read a bunch of them like all in one book. I really, really, really like it so far. I would definitely check the content warnings if you're interested in reading this one, because at least in the part of the book that I read so far, some of the stories have been kind of heavy, or like one of them in particular was pretty heavy for me. But they're also just like so cool and so creative, and I love, like, it's not just that, oh, there's an asexual character in this story, like a major focus for all of these stories is asexuality, and the stories are so creative. I really like it. So anyways, this one, it comes out next week. Also, the cover is so good. Yes. And then my last one, we're finally hitting the end. My last book on my to read list for this upcoming month is Something About Her, which this one is another arc. So I have it in advance. It'll be published on November 7th. So not until next month. But yeah, it's queer. I don't know much more about it, but it's gay. Oh my gosh. Yeah. But yeah, I'm basically the thing that I read about it was, it's a novel about two women who embark on a surprising journey of self-discovery and modern love. And that was enough for me. I was like, yep, this sounds great. I'm super excited. And the cover looks really beautiful. So yeah, I'm excited to read this one. And that is officially all of the books on my to read list for this upcoming month. What do y'all think? Do we have any overlap, or is anyone reading any of those? I need to get back into reading. I've bought books over the years, but they usually just end up sitting on the shelf. My favorite author just put out a new book in my favorite series for the first time in over a decade. Wait, I'm so curious. Maybe that's what it's going to take for me to come out of reading retirement. Wait, I need to know. Also, hi, Caleb. Who is it? What's the author? What's the book? Gently, kindly. I'm so curious. I've talked about this a bit before. I read like a ton of books in 2020, and then in 2021 I read like very few books. Like it's very like up and down for me. Sometimes I read a bunch, sometimes I just like can't read a bunch. Like it totally depends on kind of what I have going on in my life. Lately, I've been super into reading and really enjoying being able to read so much and also talk about reading so much. But also, like, I don't know, like, sometimes reading's not the vibe, and that's okay, you know? That's okay. The Percy Jackson series, yes, I've heard so many people talking about being excited about that. I've never read any of it, but I very much understand the hype. I'm Ace, and I mostly read webcomics and manga. There's a webcomic on Webtoons that has some of the best ace representation I've ever seen. It's called Dom and More. It's a romance that's mostly slice of life, but deals with a lot of heavy and spicy subjects. The author does a really good job of giving trigger warnings for each episode. Nice. That sounds really good. I haven't read a lot of like web comics and stuff. But I read some of, what's it called? There's a webcomic on Webtoon that I feel like was very popular that I read some of. And one of my favorite things about it and about like Webtoon as a platform was how the author could give specific trigger warnings for each like episode, which I really appreciated. Also, I know I talk about this a lot, but one of my favorite features of Storygraph, which is what I use to track my reading, is that they have a specific trigger warning section for each book, and you don't have to look at it if you don't want. I know like some people talk about not liking trigger warnings because it'll spoil things in the book, which understood, sure. Like if you don't want to read trigger warnings, like that's fine. But for some of us, like we really need them, you know, we really need it. And so what I really like about Storygraph is that the trigger warnings are by default hidden. So you can like choose to show them. So if you are a person who would really like to check out trigger warnings for your own like comfort and safety, you can look at them. But if you don't want to look, you don't have to, which is really cool. I highly recommend it. One of the books that's set in the overall Percy Jackson universe follows a gay couple on their own adventure. I haven't read it yet. I'm behind in reading all of the other, nice, yeah. Riordan verse? Riordan? Is that how you say it? Riordan or Riordan? Riordan? Anyways. The Sun and the Star. The cover looks amazing. I'm gonna look it up. I'm looking it up. Riordan? How do you, it's fine. I'm okay. Oh my goodness. I didn't realize how many there were, if I'm honest. I haven't read any Percy Jackson at all, but I didn't realize how extensive it was. That's so cool. Ooh. Oh, I do like the cover. That's so cool. I don't think I have any like, I'm trying to remember if there are any like series that I'm currently keeping up with with like more coming out. Oh, I think technically there's another of the, which like, is this a series? I guess it is. So the Delilah Green Doesn't Care, those books. There's a third one coming out, I think this month. Which I guess technically is a series that I've been keeping up with. But I feel like there's not a lot of like series that I currently read, you know? I'm thinking about it. I don't know. Anyways, I'm very, very excited for the books that I have on my to read. If y'all would like to keep up with like how my reading is going, if you want to share what you're reading, don't forget we have a whole entire section in Discord for book club and like reading stuff. Sorry, I keep interrupting myself to cough. So I would love to hear what you're reading. I also have an entire Instagram account that is exclusively for book stuff. I've been really enjoying taking some fun, cool book photos. So it's been like a really fun exercise in photography for me. But also it's like, I don't know, it's just fun to have like a social media account that's focused on a specific thing. So if you'd like to talk more about books, you can find me, like I said, Instagram, Discord. Those are the best two spots, really. Thank you for reading with me and chatting about books with me. And I can't wait to do it again next month.